Hey, welcome to our archive edition of Chad's Beer Podcasts. This episode, I'm talking to Ryan reschan. If you're an old school beer tuber like me, you might remember him first as Stumpy Joe Jr. and then later San Diego Beer Vlog. And I think now his channel is just his name, Ryan reschan. Yeah, he was on the show twice, first in 2011 and then 2012. Him and I did at least two, maybe three or four trades because he's in San Diego. He can get awesome stuff. You get like Pliny, all the Russian River beers, anything like Stone that was exclusive at the time. I had like Heady Topper and New England IPAs and stuff like that. But anyway, we did, like I said, we did a bunch of collab reviews, or we did like Stone Levitation or something, a Sierra Nevada Oktoberfest, and then actually he was on this show, on this channel, about a year and a half ago. He was the guest judge for the Belgian Golden Strong Ale style for Tuesday Night Beer School. So, he's still around. He just doesn't do beer reviews anymore. Although I wish he would come back. He's in San Diego, right there at I don't know if San Diego is the capital of craft beer America anymore. Maybe it's like Massachusetts now. So, anyway, so these are two episodes from, like I said, from 2011 and 2012. And next week, I hope to have a new guest, and I will see you then. Bye. Hey, welcome to another episode of Interview with a Craft Beer Enthusiast. Today I'm interviewing Ryan, better known as Stumpy Joe Jr. out on the West Coast. How you doing, Ryan?
Good, man. Thanks for having me.
Well, the first question is, what does Stumpy Joe Jr. mean?
It's a reference to the movie This Is Spinal Tap. The joke with Spinal Tap is they went through a bunch of different drummers, and one of their drummers' names was Stumpy Joe Jr., and I believe the reason for his passing was because he choked on vomit, not of his own. So I don't know. I like the movie. At the time I was signing up for YouTube, I wanted to use that for my screen name, and Stumpy Joe was taken, so I went with Stumpy Joe Jr.
Huh. Now I know you're a musician. You play what? Drums, bass, guitar, everything? Keyboards?
I'm not much of a musician, but bass is my instrument of choice. I kind of hack around on keyboards and guitar.
Is that your music when your beer reviews open?
Yeah, that's a piece that I did for just some forums we're putting together. The bass forums are putting together a compilation, and I actually wrote it for that and decided I didn't like it for that compilation, so I did something else. But then I figured, hey, why not? It makes for a decent intro, even though it's pretty short.
All right, so let's talk beer here. What's your history, if you can condense it down? What's your history with beer? Most Americans I talk to are like started out fizzy yellow drinkers and then went on to the good stuff, or did you just go straight to the good stuff? What's your story?
Well, I would try when I was young, just like maybe a little bit of the fizzy yellow stuff. Hated it, absolutely hated it. And then when I got into beer in college, I was drawn to the British style beers. So I got into beer through like Newcastle, Guinness, Bass, and then I slowly moved into the fuller stuff, ESB. Eventually kind of got hooked on Fuller's London Porter. That's when I was really getting into dark beers. So I kind of skipped the yellow fizzy stuff. And then throughout college, Sierra Nevada Pale Ale was definitely a beer that I drank a lot of as well.
How long has it been since you've been taking your beer very seriously?
I kind of always took it a little serious. I was known with my friends as always kind of being like a beer snob, because I wouldn't drink their Coors Light. If instead I would just drink something else other than beer, or maybe if they had like Sierra Nevada or Newcastle, I'd drink that. But and I grew up kind of more around wine, so I knew kind of more about wine than beer, but I eventually kind of found my way. As far as like being really serious, actually, earlier last year was when I kind of started to really branch out. Believe it or not, I wasn't a fan of hoppy beer starting out. I preferred the darker porters, stouts, that kind of thing. So I mostly looked for those, and it took many years to kind of develop my liking of hoppier beers.
So at what point did you was your enthusiasm for beer so great that you're like, I gotta get on YouTube and start making videos about it?
Well, as soon as I found out that you and a bunch of other guys and a few gals were doing reviews on the internet, I knew nothing of that at the time. So I got on there and was like, wow, this is really cool. These video reviews are much better than what I'm reading on Rate Beer and Beer Advocate.
Right.
And so I was kind of, it was a video that Chris did at Beer Geek Nation where he was like, hey, I'm trying to expand the website and ask if any of you want to help out. So I kind of emailed him and said, sure, I'll help out. I thought it was kind of cool. And so I started writing reviews, and I found that just, even I was doing I thought at the time, very nice, well-written reviews, that it was kind of getting lost in the shuffle. I saw that at the time, there didn't seem to be a whole lot of people on the West Coast doing reviews, specifically San Diego, which just has such a emerging craft beer scene, that I figured, all right, I'm gonna jump on, do some video reviews, and share some beers that I know a lot of people can't get in other parts of the country and the world.
Yeah, like kind of how you were saying before is like, Rate Beer and Beer Advocate, like those aren't, like those reviews just didn't do it for you. Like there's a lot more you can do with video than you can with text. Although the thing about text is like, a text review for the reader is much faster than watching a 5, 10, 15-minute beer review. Where you just had more fun or thought you could just be more effective as a video reviewer than a text reviewer?
Yeah, I think definitely more effective. A lot of the text reviews were just kind of like a checklist. Like, we're going to do these categories. We're just going to check off what we taste. And there's no real like art to that.
Right.
There's no in detail descriptions. And so I figured, I didn't know how the camera stuff was going to work. And, I was nervous starting out, and then eventually got comfortable, just kept doing them. And it became real fun.
How would you describe your knowledge level with beer? Like, intermediate, expert, somewhere in between?
I'm probably intermediate at this point. I think that not only trying all the different styles has helped, but I think homebrewing has helped me in terms of seeing how the ingredients work with each other, smelling them before they become beer, and just going through that process has really helped. And then just doing a lot of reading, as well.
Like what books or what magazines or websites do you read? Or
I have the Zimmergy magazine, which you get. I am a member of the American Homebrew Association, so I get a bi-monthly magazine from them.
Right.
I just read a lot of homebrew kind of forums, seeing what people are doing and talking about the processes that involve with making beer. I just recently bought a couple books. I haven't read them yet, but Tasting Beer by Randy Mosier and The Brewmaster's Table by Garrett Oliver came really highly recommended.
What's been like your evolution as a home brewer? Did you start out with kits and then go to partial and then to all grain, or are you still I don't know.
It was kind of a weird way of getting involved. We had a family friend that has been brewing his own beer for many years, and he kept saying, because he knew I was into beer. I wasn't into it as much as I am now, but I always enjoyed good quality beer. And so he just kept bugging me like, oh, you gotta brew your own beer, I have all the equipment, just go buy whatever beer, the ingredients for whatever beer you want to make, and we'll just find a afternoon and brew some beer up. So we did that, and we actually started with an all-grain batch, brew in a bag. So you just take a big mesh bag and you put all your grains in there, and you do it that way. So with his guidance, I did that first batch. It came out okay. It was a porter. From there, I decided to keep it a little more simple, start to buy my own equipment. So I went to extract brewing, and along with specialty grains. So you steep the grains like a tea bag, and then you add in the extract is kind of like the base of the beer. So I did that for many batches. I wasn't brewing very regularly. And slowly, as of last year, I really started to get more into beer, and I wanted to brew more, so I started acquiring more equipment. And as of this latest batch that I'm drinking right now, I am brewing all grain batches of beer now.
How many homebrews have you done?
Um, Maybe six, I think, right now, 6 or 7. Not that many. Been doing it for almost 2 years now. Probably not quite 2 years.
There's an objectiveness to beer, such as the ingredients used and the quality, purity of the water and things like that. But then there's also a subjectiveness, as in every individual reviewer's opinion of the beer. Now, can opinions, or more specifically reviews or critiques, ever be factual or objective? For example, if 1,000 certified BJCPs all rate a beer 100, does it make it a fact that that is indeed an outstanding beer?
No, it's. I think I lean more towards subjective because everyone has their own palate. We all have our own senses, and even though that's a good beer, it doesn't mean everyone's going to like it. Not to take anything away from that beer, I'm sure it's a great beer if they're all rating it that highly. But I mean, I'm more of an individual
Right.
approach to taste and everything. I mean, if you don't like a hoppy beer, if you don't like a dark beer, I mean that's fine with me. I might not be able to convince you, but at least give you the reasons why this is a good beer and why it's so well crafted.
Now, do you find yourself, like, with your friends and family, like, kind of spreading the gospel of good beer? Or, like, do you ever try to explain to people why the beer you like is better than Bud, Miller, and Coors? Or are they already on board?
Well, like for instance, my parents, they're more wine drinkers, so they never really drank any of the lighter beers. So when we started getting into like these better crafted beers, they were kind of on board from the beginning. It took a while to get my dad convinced that to like hoppy beers, kind of like myself, but I was a little further ahead of him. But the rest of my family, yeah, I mean, I've convinced them to a point where now if they come over to visit, they like, oh, we have to bring good beer. We can't bring crap over.
Yeah.
And I've ruined a few members of my family and into to drinking good beer. So I mean, it's worked out pretty well with family and friends. They're pretty open to it. Especially some of my buddies in college. We'd always go across the street to a brew pub and drink their beers more often than we would the crappier beers.
Yeah, as you were saying at the beginning, there's a big craft beer scene in San Diego. Can you explain that in a little more detail? I know Stone's out there.
Yeah, it's kind of divided up. Closer to downtown San Diego, I'm about a little less than 30 miles away from downtown. It's about a 30-minute drive there. Downtown has a really nice beer bar scene. There's 30th Street, has a ton of great craft beer bars. There's some craft beer bars downtown. Less breweries down there. All the big breweries are up where I'm at here in the north part of the county. There's Pizza Point Carlsbad, Stone, Green Flash, Lost Abbey / Port Brewing, and then a little further south for me is Alesmith and Ballast Point, and then there's a bunch of other smaller ones like Lightning, Iron Fist, Oceanside Ale Works. Karl Strauss is the oldest brewery in town, and they have a lot of different locations, and there's one up by me as well.
What is the goal, if you have one, of doing your video beer reviews and beer reviews in general? Like, is there any particular thing you're trying to accomplish, or like I know Mark Sart the Hopper said, it's a video diary first, it's a review second. Like, how would you explain like what the mission of your YouTube channel or of your beer reviews in general is?
I'm kind of there with Mark, except I would put number one just getting awareness of this kind of emerging scene that's been going on in San Diego. That was kind of my number one priority because there's a lot of beers that either don't make it out of the county or don't make it out of the state. So I was just kind of give awareness to them. Number two would be a personal diary of sorts. Like I did a review of a draft-only beer from Pizza Port called Hop Suey. No one's really going to be able to get that outside the county, but it's a beer they don't brew very often, so I just wanted a documentation of my thoughts on that beer. So that was number two, is kind of just a very much a personal thing, a documenting of how my palate has changed, and how I'm just learning more about beer itself as well.
Right. What's your favorite and least favorite styles of beer?
Favorites are still gonna lean towards the darker beers, stouts, be it imperial stouts or regular stouts. Oatmeal stouts are probably one of my favorites. Least favorite, just American light lagers. I've never liked them. Never really had a good example of one. I do like some like pilsners and those kind of beers. Those can be fantastic beers, but I kind of steer away from light lagers.
Do you have any guilty pleasures? Would you drink something like a Miller Lite if nothing else is available?
No, I mean I've always shied away from that. None of them been guilty pleasures, that's for sure. Even some of like the Mexican beers, I can't stand them. They're widely available around here. Thankfully, with Stone, they're so big that everywhere I go in the county, I can always find a Stone beer to drink.
Yeah.
So it's never an issue with me, thankfully.
Yeah, I saw like in your last vlog, you showed a little article you wrote for like a periodical, in that area. How did that come about, and are you planning on doing more?
The periodical is called West Coaster. Let's give them a plug right now. They just started up. That was their third issue that I wrote for. I met the guys behind it at a couple festivals during San Diego Beer Week, which is in the early part of November. And I kind of knew about them, saw their stuff around town, and I just met the guys at the festival and said, hey, maybe I'd love to write an article. I don't know what I'd write, but I'd like to write for you guys maybe one of these days. And they approached me in December saying that someone had backed out from one of their columns and asked me to do it. So I decided, well, what can I write about? What's kind of my passion about? What am I doing? And it came to be the BeerTuber scene on YouTube that I wrote about. And I don't know what they thought of the article. They did run it, so I guess they liked it enough to do that. And I'm going to be going to their launch party tonight and talking with the guys, seeing what they think, and maybe figure maybe another time to write something else for them.
What do you think the future of the beer blogging / vlogging scene is? Like every Tom, Dick, and Harry, it seems these days has a beer blog, and a lot of people are getting on YouTube. Do you think that the scene is saturated, or do you think that's good? Of just it shows that there's enthusiasm.
It's really nice to see the enthusiasm. I actually don't pay too much attention to the blogs. I mostly pay attention to the vlogs on YouTube because it's just kind of all collected there under my subscriptions.
Right.
But it's really nice to see, even though if I can't get the beer, it is kind of I am curious to see what's going on in other parts of the country and other parts of the world, and it's nice to see, especially like over across the pond, to see some more recognition that, oh hey, those Americans, they can brew some really good beers, and in some respects we're behind and we need to catch up. So I mean, that's been great to see that on the internet as well.
When you're reviewing a beer, like what's going through your mind as you're tasting it, smelling it, looking at it? Like, how much does taste matter as opposed to smell or appearance and all that, drinkability? Basically, what's your rationale or your criteria for what makes a good beer for you?
For me, I mean, taste is king. I've had some beers that have smelled not great, but have tasted fantastic, which is kind of odd because I've learned through all of this that smell and taste are very much related, which if you have a cold, you can't really taste anything. So I found that to be very interesting as well. So aroma does play a big part, but ultimately, if it tastes good, drinkability does factor in somewhat. But I mean, if it's supposed to be a big beer, I'm not gonna consider drinkability to be that high for it, and it doesn't bother me because I figure this is a one-off. This isn't a session beer. So appearance is pretty low on the scale for me. I've seen some kind of dingy-looking beers taste really good. So,
what do you think the future of craft beer in general is? Do you think we'll ever be able to own more than 10% of the market?
probably not. I think I'm not sure what the big guys are thinking, but I know they're not going to allow it to expand too much. They're just going to keep their advertising just blitz going. You're just going to keep seeing more and more. I mean, you still have even some of the biggest microbreweries, craft breweries are not even advertising. I mean, you only see Sam Adams, and they're kind of borderline now. They're really advertising.
Yeah.
So I think they're going to keep their stake. Craft beer. Well, I'm hoping that craft beer expands back out to the number of breweries that we had pre-prohibition. I'm hoping that a lot of people are drinking a lot of fresh local beer, and that they'll have a lot of great fresh local beer to drink. Hopefully, more breweries are popping up, and all this kind of friendly competition will just kick in, and everyone will just be producing great beers locally that you'll just constantly be able to get fresh.
All right, well, I guess that about wraps it up with Ryan. Go check out his YouTube at Stumpy Joe Jr. and at Beer Geek Nation. You're on there too. Yeah, so I guess that about wraps it up. So thanks to Ryan for doing the interview and the review we did before this. And
Cheers.
I'll see you. Yeah, I'll see you next time. Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye.
Even though Chad's beer reviews is over, I'm still doing interviews and stuff. And we got classic perennial BeerTuber. I don't know which side. Well, you're not on any side. Ryan, better known as Stumpy Joe Jr., aka San Diego Beer Vlog. How you doing, Ryan?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Whenever I do a follow-up interview with a fellow BeerTuber, or a BeerTuber, I guess I should say, since I'm not one anymore. The first question I always like to ask is, now that you've been on BeerTube for quite a while now, I don't know the exact time, well, A, how long have you been doing beer reviews for now? And B, what have you learned about the internet, people, the beer industry, however you want to answer it, since you've been doing BeerTube?
Yeah, I believe I started August 2010, so I just passed 2 years, I believe, is when I started. And it's been over 350 reviews. I think I've gotten definitely better. I mean, the first 50 reviews were probably absolutely terrible. Then the next 50 were probably getting better, and then maybe around 100 or so, you start to kind of figure things out as far as like how you want to conduct your beer reviews, trying to really condense what you want to say into a shorter time frame, so you're not just going on, and try not to repeat yourself too often. So hopefully I've been a little better at doing that since I started. What have I learned since then? I since I've started, and probably since I've talked to you, I think I've gotten to know more people through YouTube. I mean, I've actually had quite a few people, come to my house. I've had Winton stay at my house now. I've met a lot of people in person. Peter and Winton, a lot of the guys.
The entire Beer Geek Nation.
Right. Chris, I've met Chris a couple times now. Daniel came out, James came out, and it's been fun meeting those guys. I've gotten to a point around town where I've had some random people just come up to me and say, like, hey, I watch your beer reviews, keep it up. And then that's been fun. And then even through that, meeting some people that I've met, kind of via that, like, oh, I recognize you, like, you do the beer review. I'm like, yeah. And then, like, some of those people I'm still hanging out with, they've become friends and around town, and it's been fun.
Cool. Do you still write for the West Coaster magazine?
Yeah.
I saw you. Whenever we did I don't know how many beer trades we've done, at least 2 or 3, and you sent me one. You wrote an article about BeerTubers on there.
Right. Yeah, that was my first article, I believe. But the I wrote articles, and I believe the June and July issues, if I remember correctly. It was 2 months in a row. I did one on local hop farms, and I did the other one on. Oh crap! I can't remember what it was, but I might be having a little more regular writing column. They've been asking me maybe to do some stuff on homebrewing, so I might do a few more homebrewing columns for them in the future. That might start in November at this point. So I'm still in touch with those guys, and West Coaster's going strong, which is great. They've upped their page count. Distributions much bigger, getting some heavy hitter advertisers going on with them, so it's been fun watching them grow and kind of helping them out along the way.
Yeah. This happened a long time ago, but it happened since the last interview with you, so I wanted to ask you about it. Greg Cook from Stone, every once in a great while, you have his opening clip where he's like, "Hey, you're watching Ryan's beer reviews. Let's go see what's on tap." How did you get him to say that, and what was the scenario, you know?
Yeah, actually, I have not used that in a while. I need to bring that one back. Maybe I will for my next Stone review. But I had never met Greg at that point. I just kind of randomly approached him. Say, "Hey, Greg, nice to meet you. I'm Ryan." He's like, "Oh." I'm like, "I do beer reviews on YouTube, and I was just wondering if you could kind of shoot a little intro for me for some of my reviews." And he's like, "Oh yeah, I watched the review you did of Levitation, which happened to be with you." And he's like, "Oh yeah, and his bottle was way out of date, and we're trying to fix that. We're trying to get fresher beer out, and actually since then they started the whole thing on their website. You go on. If you find old Stone beer, supposedly if you report it, they'll come in and actually fix it and remove the old beer."
Right.
So he's like, "Sure, I can just shoot an intro from you." And then he's like, "What beer do you want?" I'm like, "I don't know." And this was during one of their early festivals of the year where it's all Stone beers on tap. Because actually normally they only have 10 to 12 Stone beers, and the rest are guest beers of the 30 some odd taps they have. And so I got a free beer from him, sat there. I'm like, and he's like, "Where do you want to film it?" And I'm like, "I don't know. You just want to do it at the bar?" So I told him, I'm like, "So there's this other beer reviewer. His name's Greg. And so he has this whole intro about seeing what's in the fridge and all that. So I'm trying to relay to him, it'd be fun to do a take on what this guy does. Just kind of say, because his name, also happens to be Greg. Right. So I thought it kind of would work if he comes out. And so originally I wanted to say, well, let's just go see what's on the fridge. And he's kind of like, "No, we're at the bar. There's tap handles. Let's just let's go see what's on tap today." And I'm like, "Okay, that'll work." And I think we shot about 4 or 5 takes, and the last one worked out the best.
Wow. Now, has that been since since I've been doing Chad's beer reviews? I've had some beer celebrity encounters kind of like that. Like I had, Paul Kane from Southern Tier actually do something just like that. Was that the coolest thing that's happened to you so far, or has anything been better than that?
That, in terms of adding something to my channel, that's probably really the only thing. Although I don't know, I guess I haven't gone out and interviewed, or I've talked with a lot of brewers around town, but I haven't really interviewed them. Mm-hmm. But I've met some great people. Chuck Silva from Green Flash is an awesome guy. We met him during the Stone Rare Beer Breakfast back during San Diego Beer Week. All the guys got to chat with him. He's a great guy. Colby Chandler's a specialty brewer for Ballast Point. And I just chat beer with him. I talk brewing with him because, part of his job is helping out homebrewers at because Ballast Point also has a homebrew supply shop at their second location, along with a tap room They do a lot of small specialty batches. So I'll just talk. I met him one time. He was the first person that recognized me when I went up during the previous year's beer week, and I went up to the booth, and I'm like, yeah, I'll have some Sculpin. He's like, oh, hey, you're that guy who does beer reviews. And Colby's kind of known as like the Yoda of the San Diego beer scene. He just kind of knows everything that's going on because he used to be the Brewers Guild president, and he was the first one that was kind of like, hey, I recognize him. We just got talking, met with him at other events, and learned a lot about beer from him, just asking him questions about things. So he's been great about it. Some of the smaller brewers I've talked with, some of the local Vista breweries, some of them, I'll talk with them and talk brewing and ask them what they're coming out with and what hops you're using in that, and just mostly just more daily basis conversations than like what Greg did for me, which was very cool, is something that I have documented.
Now, you've been home brewing for a while, and you've been all grain brewing exclusively for a while now. How far would you say you've evolved as a home brewer, and like where else do you want to go? Like, do you consider yourself like an expert home brewer now, or are you still?
No, definitely not expert. Definitely intermediate. I've come a long ways for sure. I mean, I look back at some stuff I did like really early days, pre all grain, and it's kind of like, you just don't know what you're doing. I mean, you're just getting into it. I probably went almost a year without reading anything on how to brew. I just kind of got taught by a family friend, kind of like his process, what he would do, and beer would turn out mostly good. So I'm like, okay, I'll do that. And then eventually I'm kind of like, well, I should probably read up on this, and kind of start reading, getting a lot of knowledge. It gets to a point where I started to transition into all grain just because I thought, well, I can really dial in things more as far as I want in a recipe. And that's kind of like the transition to all grain for me, was when you start to get into developing recipes and kind of like trying to really do your own thing. And through that, just a lot of reading, just trying to do as much research as you can, and then you just experimenting with stuff. And I had some beers that are kind of like, that was very good. I won't try that again. And then some just turned out really good. Like, wow, how'd that turn out so good?
Consider quitting your day job and becoming a full-time brewer?
Well, I get questions. People ask me when they find out, oh, you brew your own beer, and usually they're like, well, would you want to start up your own brewery? And usually my answer is like, no. That's, for one, it takes a ton of money, and two, it's a lot of work to do that, and a lot of time and money. And I just wouldn't. I don't think I'd want to do that. But if I had the right backer, there, it's like, yeah, well, here's a couple $1 million. That will fund a brewery plus, like, say, a year's worth of supplies and paychecks. I'd be probably quit my day job to do that. It might be worth the effort to actually. I mean, let's put it this way: if I could probably make the same amount of money I'm working right now to brew beer, I'd love to do that. That'd be awesome.
That's pretty cool. Now you do a podcast with Daniel, aka Beyond the Pour, aka the Endosymbiosis.
Yeah.
Tell us about the podcast. How did it get started? How often do you do it? How do you know what to talk about?
Well, Daniel wanted to start doing a podcast because he listens to a lot of brewing and beer podcasts himself, and he thought that there's a gap between the BeerTube community, which is mostly reviewers and homebrewers, and the podcast community, which has a similar kind of mix of people on there. And he just kind of wanted to transition over and try something different, and maybe try to bring some of the YouTube community to kind of recognize, like, oh, there's people doing podcasts, and try to get into the podcast community a little bit and kind of let them know that, oh, there's YouTube people, and just have a forum of more length where we could discuss topics that he wanted to discuss. Because he wanted to, I mean, the whole thing Beyond the Pour was go beyond the beer review and just discuss news, certain topics that might come up through news stories, or controversies in the beer community, and just kind of give a different light, a little more response, a little more community maybe, because I don't know how you feel, because now that you're retired from reviewing, but I mean, everyone was kind of doing their own thing, but there wasn't really too much connection beyond a few comments here and there between all our reviews. Like, there wasn't someone presenting a topic and then everyone kind of responding to with a video. And I know that happens in some other parts of YouTube where there is more of a response kind of thing. And Daniel was trying to do something like that, but he wanted to start with podcasts and eventually wanted to do some YouTube videos. But unfortunately, he's been very busy. He's gone back to school. He's still working part-time, and he's getting married very shortly. So we were trying to do it every month at least, maybe every 2 to 3 weeks if possible. But we've cut back, and he hasn't had time to upload and edit our podcast. But that was kind of the reason behind starting that up.
Yeah, you seem to have cut back too. I mean, I still, keep an eye on the BeerTube community, so to speak. For a long time there, you were doing almost a review a day. Have you cut back to like 2-3 days a week, or am I just not noticing it?
I've been 3 days for a while. I had some spurts where I just I was time off from work, usually around the holidays.
Right.
And I was just kind of like, well, I got a lot of stuff I want to review, so I'll just throw them up every day. And then it's got to a point where I'm like, that's probably too many. I'll just do the normal, sort of. A lot of people, there's a lot of people that just do every day, and then there's the people that kind of do like 3 days a week, around there. So I've been sticking with about 3 days a week, with maybe a homebrew video mixed in or some other random video. I haven't done a vlog in a while. I probably should. I've been reviewing, like, I used to have a nice backlog of reviews, and I kind of went through the majority of those. So
yeah, speaking of your vlogs, because you used to, show your hops growing in your backyard. Right. What's the latest update? Because it isn't September harvest season for hops.
Yeah, I did a very, very poor job this year of keeping track on that, because I did do an early one this season. Everything's harvested at this point. I just harvested the last of my Columbus hops, and there's a few stragglers of Cascade and just a few random Mount Hood hops, but everything's been harvested at this point. Most of it's already been harvested, dried, and vacuum sealed, and is in my freezer right now. And I'm hoping I think I ended up getting I didn't have as good a yield as I thought, but I think I ended up with fully dried about maybe 3.5 ounces of Chinook, maybe 1.5 ounces of Cascade, maybe 3/4 ounce of Mount Hood, and I'm guessing I'll end up with maybe 1/2 ounce to 3/4 ounce of Columbus.
Now, have you brewed any wet hops ales with them, or you just took them off the vine and threw them in?
I would like to do that eventually. I'm hoping next year I'll do that. Unfortunately, this year some of them were kind of slow to come up, and then they didn't take off as well. And then when they did, we've had a really hot and humid summer, and hops tend to like more drier weather.
Right.
And maybe I need to fertilize them a little more. I'm not entirely sure, but next year I'd love to do actual wet hop ale, where you literally go vine to kettle. I mean, in terms of brewing, I think I'm going to try to do that this year. It's been so hot here this summer that I haven't brewed in like a month and a half, because it's too hot to get outside and brew it.
All right, well, I guess that about wraps it up with this interview with Ryan. You want to give out your Twitter, YouTube, Facebook?
Twitter, yeah. Twitter, I'm R3 Untapped, which is a program you're using as well, which is good fun for keeping track of what you're drinking. I'm R³ on Untapped. Let's see. YouTube is youtube.com Stumpy Joe Jr.
Right.
Find me on beergeeknation.com/Ryan. Podcasts with Daniels, beyondthepour.com. Occasionally I have some articles up on westcoastersd.com. They do the print version, but there's also digital versions if you want to kind of follow what's going on in San Diego. Oh, and just for everyone out there, if you're coming to visit San Diego and you want to know where to go and all that, West Coaster has an excellent map of every single brewery. They have bottle shops, brew pubs. They have a huge map of all the beer locations that you'd want to visit. So if anything, check out their website for that.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks for doing this interview, and thanks for doing the beer review we just shot before this. So
Yep.
I'll see you real soon. So thanks for watching.
Yep.
Bye.
Cheers.
Cheers.